If chariot wheels were really found at the bottom of the Red Sea, what story would they be trying to tell? Not a single shipwreck, not a few scattered artifacts, but what looks like the remains of an entire army, frozen in coral on the seafloor. According to a small, quiet expedition in late 2024, that's exactly what they believe they saw. Wheel-shaped coral formations, twisted metal, horse bones, and human remains spread out for more than a mile. If true, this wouldn't just support the Bible's story of the Exodus. It would shake archaeology, embarrass experts, and force the world to reconsider one of the most famous miracles ever recorded. So, why is almost nobody talking about it? Today, we're going to walk through the claims, the maps, the strange underwater landscape, and the uncomfortable silence that followed. The Secret Dive, the $10 million mission. This wasn't a textbook university project with press releases and photo ops. In late 2024, a small privately funded team of divers, engineers, and underwater researchers slipped quietly into the Gulf of Aqaba, a deep arm of the Red Sea between the Sinai Peninsula and modern-day Saudi Arabia. They weren't looking for broken pottery or random anchors. They had one target, the legendary Lost Army of Pharaoh. Armed with advanced side-scan sonar military-grade ROVs with 4K cameras and highly sensitive magnetometers, they began a slow, methodical grid search over a specific patch of seafloor. For days, the sonar just painted sand and rock. Then something changed. On the operator's screen, symmetrical shapes appeared, round, evenly spaced, lined up like a trail. Not random, not natural-looking. They looked like wheels. The team deployed the ROV. High-powered lights cut through the dark water as the robot dipped down nearly 900 feet. At first, nothing. Just the rippled bottom of the sea. Then the camera swung past something out of place. A perfect circular form, completely coated in coral, but still unmistakably wheel-shaped. As the ROV drifted forward, more shapes appeared. Wheel-like rings, long, straight forms that looked like axles, collapsed rectangular outlines where chariot cabs could have been, and mixed in among them. Bones. Some clearly animal, skulls and ribs about the size of horses. Others human, fragments of spines and skulls scattered like a battlefield buried in silence. They followed this debris field for nearly a mile and a half. This didn't look like one ship going down. It looked like an entire force caught in a single sudden disaster. Then came the detail that matched one of the most ridiculed claims of all. In the middle of the coral shapes, the cameras picked up a faint, metallic shimmer, a dull golden gleam under the crust. A gold-covered wheel, locked permanently in coral. They couldn't remove it without destroying it. So they did the only thing they could. Filmed it, photographed it, documented everything. If the footage is genuine, it doesn't just hint at the Exodus story. It lines up with it in eerie, specific ways. To understand why this spot matters, we have to zoom out. The Gulf of Aqaba is like an underwater canyon. In most places, it drops straight down 5,000 to 6,000 feet, over a mile deep. No ancient army could wade across that. Except in one very specific place. Right off a huge Egyptian beach called Nuweiba, sonar surveys reveal something bizarre. A raised underwater ridge, almost like a natural road, about 10 miles long, several miles wide, sloping down to only around 800 to 900 feet, instead of plunging into the abyss. On either side of this ridge, the seafloor drops off a cliff into deep water. But across the top of this hidden bridge is where the claimed chariots and bones are scattered. Now look at the surface. Nuweiba Beach is huge and flat, big enough for a massive crowd, walled in by steep mountains on both sides, open only toward the sea. The biblical account in Exodus describes Israel trapped, mountains on both sides, the sea in front, and Pharaoh's army closing in behind. from space and from sonar, this region matches that description uncannily well. Ancient writers couldn't have known about an underwater land bridge only visible with modern technology. Yet the way the story is written points exactly to this kind of setup, a trap, and a way out that only God could open, the outsider who saw it first. But here's where the story takes a strange turn. This 2024 expedition didn't choose this spot at random. They were following a map. Decades earlier, in the late 1970s, a nurse anesthetist from Tennessee named Ron Wyatt believed the Exodus was real history, not mythology. He wasn't a professor, not a trained archaeologist, just a stubborn, Bible-believing explorer. Reading Exodus literally, he argued, the crossing couldn't be some shallow marsh in northern Egypt. It had to be a deep body of water where an army could truly be drowned. That logic took him to the Gulf of Aqaba, not the smaller Reed Sea marshes, and specifically to the massive, mountain-locked Nuweiba Beach. His thinking was simple. If this was the place where Israel was trapped, then this must be the place where the sea opened. And if that's true, the remains of Pharaoh's army should still be somewhere on that underwater bridge. So in 1978, with basic scuba gear and a cheap camera, he dove. What he claimed to see: coral-coated wheel shapes, long straight forms like Axel's horse and human bones among the debris, and even a gold-plated chariot wheel. He brought blurry photos and grainy video. Mainstream archaeology mocked him. He was labeled a fraud, a fantasist, a religious crank. For over 40 years, his claims were dismissed. But he left something behind: coordinates, sketches, dive logs, and hand-drawn maps of that underwater ridge and debris field. And in 2024, a privately funded team took those old, ridiculed notes and overlaid them with millions of dollars of cutting-edge tech. According to the reports coming from that project, what their sonar and cameras found lines up almost exactly with the spots Wyatt pointed to decades earlier. The man they said was crazy might have been right about more than anyone wanted to admit. If there really is an ancient battlefield at the bottom of that underwater bridge, the next question is obvious. How did an entire army end up there? The Bible gives one answer. God parted the sea, Israel crossed on dry ground, and the waters collapsed back over the Egyptians. Some researchers have tried to imagine how God might have done this using the laws of nature. He created a massive volcanic eruption, like the one at ancient Thera, Santorini, could trigger a tsunami. Before the wave hits, the water draws back, exposing the seabed, a path through the sea. Then the wall of water returns, wiping out anyone caught in the middle. Others talk about unusual winds, tectonic shifts, or rare tidal patterns that could temporarily expose a land bridge before the water rushes back. Others point to more mysterious possibilities, tying it to the power of the Ark of the Covenant later in Israel's story, seeing the Exodus as both miracle and mystery. However you look at it, every theory, natural or supernatural, faces the same reality. An underwater ridge in the one place, an ancient crossing is even possible, a trail of wheel-shaped coral and bones scattered right along that path, and a biblical account that has described a catastrophic drowning in that region for over 3,000 years. Something happened there. The only debate is what and who was behind it. Why the deafening silence? You might think news like this would explode across headlines. Evidence for the Exodus found. But that's not what happened. When early results from the 2024 dives were quietly shared with certain scholars and institutions, the reaction, according to people close to the project, was not celebration. It was silence. For over a century, most secular Egyptologists have treated the biblical Exodus as legend. No wandering nation in the Sinai, no catastrophic loss of Egypt's elite chariot corps, no parted sea. Entire careers, textbooks, and museum displays are built on that assumption. So what happens if a debris field of chariots and bones, dated to the right time period, shows up exactly where a literal reading of Exodus would lead you? For some, it would mean decades of confident statements suddenly look shaky. Published theories need rewriting, and a myth starts to look a lot more like history. That's not just academically inconvenient, it's professionally and even politically explosive. Is that why some experts are so quiet? Is it just caution and skepticism, or something more intentional? We can't read hearts, but we can see patterns. Evidence that doesn't fit the current story is often pushed aside. People who raise uncomfortable questions get labeled fringe, and sometimes the easiest way to deal with a discovery is to ignore it. Meanwhile, divers report something else unsettling. When they compare older maps and footage from past dives to new high-resolution scans, some parts of the debris field look disturbed. Areas once said to be dense with artifacts now look oddly bare. There are long drag marks on the seafloor, as if heavy objects were hooked and pulled away. Is it natural erosion? Currents? Or has someone quietly been cleaning up the bottom of the sea? We don't have proof, but the questions are getting harder to ignore. So what do we do with all of this? A one-of-a-kind underwater land bridge, chariot-shaped coral and bone fields right along its path. Decades of ignored claims that now seem strangely vindicated, and a world that largely stays silent. For believers, this doesn't create faith. We don't need chariot wheels to trust that God split the sea. But there is something powerful about realizing that the stories we grew up hearing in church may not just be spiritual metaphors. They may be literal history, written in coral and stone at the bottom of the sea. In the end, every viewer has to decide, is this all coincidence and misinterpretation? Or is the Red Sea quietly holding on to physical echoes of a miracle God performed to free His people? Either way, one thing is certain. The God who parted waters, humbled empires, and led His people through impossible circumstances is still God today. If He could carve a path through a wall of water, He can make a way through whatever you're facing right now. If this opened your eyes, or even just made you think differently about the Exodus story, don't let it stop here. Like this video to help it reach more people. Comment below. Do you think this site is real evidence or just coincidence? And if you love digging into the Bible, history, and the mysteries of God's power, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. There are more stories like this, more myths that might not be myths at all. May God bless you, and I'll see you in the next video.